Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the PrimateCast. The release date for today's podcast is Wednesday, April the 6th, 2016. And this is the PrimateCast number 41, in which we'll be joined by Professor Jae Chun Choe. He is a behavioral ecologist and professor and chair at Ewha Women's University in Seoul, South Korea. He's also the founding president of the National Institute of Ecology, the first and grandest institute dedicated to ecology in the country of South Korea. And in the studio, in order to help me set this interview up, which I think you guys will probably enjoy, is Cécile Sarabian, as usual,
Hello,
from Conservation
everyone.
Voices, and also one of our Korean students, Hoongjin Ryu. Welcome to the PrimateCast.
Nice to meet you.
It's cool having you here. You've been a student at PRI as long as this PrimateCast has been around. So you were kind of, since its inception, you were here and kind of part of the idea.
Yes, I got the first invitation from you, but that record is still in the computer.
Yeah, right. We were just joking about how we originally wanted to have a segment on the PrimateCast discussing movies involving primates. And so Hoongjin and Chris and I did a really silly take, our impressions of the Rise of the Planet of the Apes when that came out.
It was not that silly, but...
Okay, well,
yeah.
may in the future see the light of day.
Yeah.
And so I asked Hoongjin to join us on the PrimateCast to kind of give his impressions kind of the rise of ecology and primatology in Korea, because that's, as you'll see, is kind of a new area. And we have Cécile here because she was recently in Korea.
Yeah.
Visiting this, you visited the NIE.
Yeah, I visited the NIE and the Biodiversity Foundation, for which Professor Choe is the original founder.
Mm-hmm.
And now one of his students took over, Sana Kim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you were able to meet with him, I assume, during the time.
Yeah,
and
that was great.
yeah, he was really genuine guy, it seems. So I had the chance to interview him at last year. So this interview is coming out about a year after it was actually taken, and it was part of the leading graduate program in primatology and wildlife science of Kyoto University's annual symposium. And so I managed to corner him outside in the parking lot. So the interview has a few bumps here and there with wind and cars going by, but it was a nice talk, and he's just a really easy person to talk to. So Hoongjin, before we talk a little bit more about who he is, what was your first involvement with him? How did you kind of get connected and then end up here at PRI?
That's really good question, but it should be very long, so I should make it short.
Okay, do your best.
Yeah, I just finished my military service, and then I just attended a lecture, and it was just duty for us to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just came out and he said, I'm a guy who study evolution. And then at the moment, I didn't know that there is a professor who study evolution.
He might have been the only one.
Yeah, and then his lecture was so great. I've never seen that good lecture by professors for public.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I was so impressed. And then 1 year later, I just sent him a message.
Mm-hmm.
I want to visit you. And then he said, yeah, just come. And then he arranged one position for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked for them for around 2 years.
Okay.
As a research assistant, and then I did lots of research activity on cricket and crabs,
Mm-hmm.
and also other animals.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have study group
Mm-hmm.
on primate, and then I just found that bonobo will be very interesting.
So going back even before that, before your military service is mandatory, I guess, in Korea for you. So before that, though, you did your undergraduate degree in biology, but it was a focus on molecular biology?
Yes.
Is that correct? Or microbiology?
Yeah, it was mainly on molecular biology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but before I studied in construction field.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I found that, I'm not really good at that.
Right.
Designing or just making something new. And I just found that biology is more for me.
Okay, but then in many ways you did design and make something new with your study, and especially coming from Korea, where without Professor Choe, I mean, probably none of this would be happening there.
Definitely.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
Go ahead.
But last time we were discussing about you being probably the only one and the first Korean studying bonobos in the wild. And you mentioned you don't know anyone else. I don't know anyone else either. And there are not so many people studying bonobos anyway, so yeah. I mean, it's a long way from crickets or crabs.
But they are connected.
Bonobos.
Well, of course,
Yeah.
through evolutionary biology and ecology. And that was one of the interesting things that comes out in the interview is Professor Choe talking about how, I mean, he had certain goals when he was younger and in terms of research and things, but then once he came back to Korea eventually and took the position at Ewha Women's University, I mean, because it was wide open and there was no infrastructure, he basically had to be super diverse and all of his students were doing all kinds of things.
Yeah, he definitely just gave up his own research and then he just, he called himself as a servant for a student.
Yeah.
So it definitely, make this situation at the moment of Korea.
Yeah.
But I know how he sacrificed himself for us.
Well, and not just you, because he's been given all kinds of accolades too as a public educator in science. I mean, I just looked at a biography here online, and so he's received numerous awards, like the first ever Science Culture Award, an award for advancing women's movement issues.
That was really good one. I
So
don't know, that's my opinion.
well, but it's important, and I mean, he works at a national women's university, so
It's not national.
Sorry, not national. But in Seoul.
Yeah.
And so, Cecile, when you recently went and visited, what was kind of the main point of your
My
journey
trip
there?
there.
Yeah.
Well, there were two reasons. So Yina Kim, a former student of the Primate Research Institute here, she kind of invited me, and she's also a former student of Professor Choe. So I went to give two talks, actually. One at the Biodiversity Foundation in Seoul, and the other one at NIE. At the Biodiversity Foundation for two reasons. One is outreach of my research on discussed and non-human primates. And the second part was dedicated to our roots and shoots activities back in Iran. So, and because we kind of developed partnership with roots and shoots groups in Korea. So I went there to give them updates and we exchanged about future plans and directions.
And so you visited the NIE, and for anyone listening, I mean, just Google it, National Institute of Ecology, Korea, and you'll be blown away by the way this place looks.
I was amazed. It's massive building,
ultra modern.
Yeah, ultra modern. Lots of different kind of departments, exhibits, museums, and it's still building. Like Professor Choe will tell about it, but they are building a primate center. They have this polar area, this desert area, and ultra high tech.
And of course, he has had a long involvement with PRI researchers as well, and I think establishing a center for primatological research there is also high on their agenda.
Yeah.
And just Hyunjin, coming back to you, it's a nice transition because at the NIE, when we spoke with Professor Choe last year, as you'll see in the interview, we talked about something like 200 staff and employees and researchers at that institute, but now it's something like 400. You just reported.
That's what Yena told me.
And
400 in total, and it's still like they're still recruiting.
Probably growing.
So, yeah.
And he also mentions in the interview that basically all of his former students are now his colleagues, and so really from the ground up, from nothing, he's been able to push this quite some ways. And so Hyunjin, for you, you actually came to Japan to pursue your studies with Professor Furichi here. But what do you think longer term? I mean, does it look good to return to Korea? Is that something that you also want to kind of pick up on as well? Not to say that you feel his, his shoes, but
that's a really good question actually. And one problem of Korean primatology is we don't have any primate, and then it's not really easy to convince people, not only public but also those people in high society or in the government. They don't agree with us. But the way we can do that is we have to just change the public first, and then if public understand, and then those people in the high position, they will just follow us. So I think it's promising, but it's like I have to do lots of work, or not only me. I mean, I want to be a team of them in Korea, and then we can kind of promote those Korean publics understand, and then we can recruit more people for study not only primate, also wildlife, and then help to understand wildlife.
Yeah.
I hope.
Well, and I think that Professor Choe has been a dominant force in that. So you even just mentioned that he, as a best-selling author for popular books on science and behavior, he even has his own section at bookstores. I think so obviously that goes a long way towards getting the ideas out far beyond what just the scientific practice itself is doing. So I wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I'm always argue that we are also primate. So when they say we don't have any primate, hey, we are primate.
There you go.
Then
So from one primate to another, let's just get right into this interview with Professor Jae Chun Choe. So you gave a talk here. You were invited as part of or one of the invited speakers for this conference, and partly because of the recent collaboration you've been doing with PRI and with Professor Matsuzawa, and also the sending of students to us here in Japan who've done a great job. But maybe I want to go way back, not to date you here, but to kind of how you got your start in studies of ecology, animal behavior.
Well, I began my master's work at Penn State University in 1979. I studied community ecology of ectoparasites of some Alaskan seabirds. But deep inside, I've always wanted to study, some large animals, wildlife, so to speak. I used to watch the Animal Kingdom, that kind of documentary on TV all the time, and dream to be in Tarzan's land someday. And then, but the parasite studies, I thought I could do it very quick and then move on. But somehow it took me 3 years, and I almost continued to go on for a PhD, but I somehow switched. And then I went to Harvard University, working with Ed Wilson and Bertil Dobler. I studied some obscure group of insects called Zooraptora, no one knows a thing about.
You mentioned in your talk how you came into the ant world, but actually...
Right. But then, as I said before, being around with ant people all the time, I had to study ants as well. You just can't get away from it. So I ended up studying a very interesting the colony founding system of Azteca ants, and discovered sometimes ant queens, not only among the same species, between different species, ant queens are readily cooperate to try to have as strong incipient colonies as possible. That was a very interesting study. And then I moved on to University of Michigan as an assistant professor and junior fellow of Michigan Society of Fellows. Then in 1994, I got an offer from my alma mater, the Seoul National University back in Korea. So I went back to my country. That changed everything in my life, because there literally nobody was doing anything related to study of behavior, evolutionary biology, or anything like that. So I had to play jack of all trades, and I was getting too many students asking for, let's do dolphin study, let's do elephant studies. And so I finally had to give up my own life and decided to become a so-called servant to all my students. That made my life crazy, because I had to read all these literatures in all these species of different animals. But at the same time, it was huge fun. I mean, you get to learn about all different kinds of things. But once again, way deep in my spirit, or so to speak, I've always wanted to study primates, and that the opportunity came thanks to Tetsuro Matsuzawa and Jane Goodall. And now my group is studying Javan gibbon in Indonesia, and then some orangutan studies in Seoul Zoo, Evelyn Zoo. And on top of all this, about a year and a half ago, I became a founding president of newly established institute called the National Institute of Ecology, which is not a small institute. We have close to 200 ecologists now working on various topics from basic ecology to conservation ecology. There, I want to really physically set up a primate research center. At Ewha Women's University, I don't have much money, so it's just a team of students who are trying to do research, but perhaps it's the time as a president I have some power to do. So I want to have physical institute within the National Institute of Ecology, and I'm getting awful lot of help from my good colleagues at PRI. Hopefully by sometime next year, might have some building set up and start a new research line. That's my dream.
It's really exciting. I mean, you mentioned, so there wasn't
Yeah.
very much infrastructure for this kind of evolutionary ecological research, but you've also mentioned to me privately that you have now had the first, so students graduate the first, was it evolutionary psychologist and
Right.
primatologist?
Right. Yeah. And there are many of firsts from my lab. About I don't know a couple of dozens students. My former students are everywhere within the country. They're doing anything from insects to human studies, extreme diversity. And when I first came to Korea, I had no colleague to discuss matters. I only had to rely on emails and faxes, but now I have a bunch of people who can get together and discuss science, which makes me wonderful. And I think I made the right choice rather than insisting on my own research, very narrow range of research. I decided to serve all my students, and they're my colleagues now. So it's a wonderful feeling.
As also, one of your many duties now seems to be involved with COP.
Yeah. The Korean government, I don't know how it happened, but they held COP12 of CBD last October, and there usually a Minister of Environment becomes the chair, becomes the president for the following 2 years. But our minister, I don't know why, but he asked me to do it. He was trained in German, so he speaks German, but I guess the common language on the floor was English, and he wasn't feeling very comfortable. So he asked me, could you do it for me? So I didn't know what I was getting into. I thought I had to just preside a couple of meetings, but there in front of everybody they said he will be the president. So I ended up taking care of all this business. Funny thing was, in the history of CBD, most presidents were politicians. I guess in whatever the country that hosts the meeting, the minister or prime minister, whoever, becomes the more or less symbolic president. But they're saying this is really the first time a scientist who knows about the science of biodiversity is going to be the president. So they're telling me they're excited and they can do all kinds of things. Problem is I don't have time. But I'll try to make time and somehow make the best out of my presidency to promote something good about biodiversity protection.
So maybe just to close out the interview, I wanted to ask, so you're also doing, I guess you could call a lot of public understanding of science work.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder if you can kind of put into context, and you see things changing within South Korea, and there's a lot more interest being generated in ecological science, for example.
Well, myself included, a fair number of the population or field scientists, we early on we decided to have a very good public relations. So let's translate lots of books, and let's try to write books, and let's try to give public lectures, even on TV. And so in general, Korean general public tends to have pretty balanced understanding as far as biology is concerned. In reality, at the university, if you have 10 faculty members in biology department, it's fortunate. You would be lucky if there is one ecology or evolutionary biologist in the department. So there's a complete bias in reality, but the general public thinks, the two fields are equally important. And that's what I think we have done some good jobs, and I hope this will continue. One really nice thing, in my opinion, that happened was when we rescued one dolphin from doing show at the zoo, and we rehabilitated that individual and returned him back to ocean. I'm sorry, something got caught. Something flew into my
Bit of insectivity.
Yeah, insect. But anyway, when we were doing that, to me, something really excellent happened. At the beginning, when we did the public survey, it was 50-50. People thought we were crazy spending government money to release an animal back to nature. They're saying, we don't have enough money for human welfare. Why are you talking about animal welfare all of a sudden? And they were saying, well, if you want to release dolphin, well, why not elephants? Why not chimpanzees? And all this negative feeling. So it was 50-50, very clearly divided. But then a year and a half later, by the time we were about to release that dolphin, we took another survey. It was 85-15. 85% of Korean population were in favor. After we released, about a month after we released, we took another survey. 95% of Korean people said all the dolphins in captivity should go out to nature. So we were going, yay! We did it. I think that incident was really helpful to communicate with the general public. General public has a lot more understanding now, in my opinion.
Okay, well, Professor Jae Chun, thanks so much for joining us on the PrimateCast.
Thank you.
Congratulations and best of luck in your mission here.
Thank you. I need that. Thank you.
You have been listening to the PrimateCast, a podcast series dedicated to the study and conservation of primates around the world. Brought to you by the Centre for International Collaboration and Advanced Studies in Primatology of the Primate Research Institute of Kyoto University. Visit us online at www.cisasp.pri.kyoto-u.ac.jp/news/podcasts and follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/theprimatecast and on Twitter at theprimatecast.